Everyone remembers the verdict, but almost nobody remembers what the jury actually heard.
Millions watched the trial on television. The jurors didn't. They could only decide the case using evidence presented inside this courtroom.
Everything began on the night of June 12th, 1994.
Investigators knew every decision made that night would later face intense scrutiny.
Every sample, every photograph, every note would eventually become courtroom evidence. Within hours, the story dominated news across America.
The investigation soon focused on a former football superstar whose fame transformed an already shocking case into a national spectacle.
The case became more than a criminal trial. It became a national event.
While the world followed every headline, the jury focused on only one thing: the evidence presented before them.
12 ordinary citizens were chosen for one extraordinary responsibility. The jurors weren't allowed to base their decision on television, newspapers, or public opinion. Opening statements introduced two very different versions of the same events. The trial centered on physical evidence collected during the investigation. DNA testing became one of the prosecution's most important scientific arguments. Investigators also presented blood evidence collected from multiple locations. Scientific experts explained how forensic testing was performed and interpreted. The defense challenged not only the conclusions, but also the investigative process itself. Jurors heard detailed testimony about how evidence was collected, transported, and stored. The trial now turned on one critical question. Could the prosecution eliminate every reasonable doubt? The defense carefully examined how the investigation had been conducted from the very beginning.
Even small procedural mistakes can become important inside a criminal trial.
Jurors were asked to evaluate not only evidence, but also the credibility of those presenting it.
One courtroom demonstration quickly became one of the most discussed moments of the entire trial.
Each side argued that the same demonstration supported its own conclusions. Questions about witness credibility became another important part of the trial. The judge reminded jurors that their decision had to follow the law, not emotion. After months of testimony, the jury began deliberating behind closed doors. The deliberation lasted less than 4 hours before a verdict was reached. Everyone returned to hear the decision that would become part of American legal history. On October 3, 1995, the courtroom finally heard the jury's decision.
The jury returned a verdict of not guilty on both murder charges.
The verdict sparked intense debate across the country, with reactions that differed from one community to another. But the legal story continued after the criminal case concluded. In a later civil case, a different legal standard led to a different outcome. Criminal and civil trials use different standards of proof. That distinction is essential to understanding the two outcomes. Decades later, the case is still studied by lawyers, journalists, and historians because of its impact on law, media, and public trust. History often leaves us with difficult questions. Understanding the evidence is just as important as understanding the headlines.